everybody, welcome to week 2 of our half square triangle challenge. You see behind me the 2 half square triangle blocks that I made last week. This week we're going to use a new method which will allow us to get 16 half square triangles out of 2 11.5-inch blocks. Let's get started. So now we're going to take the 11.5-inch block that we have right sides together on our fabric, and we're going to measure halfway, and then we're going to mark a line. And I am using a Frixion pen that is pink, and it is supposed to be heat erasable, I believe. Yep, erasable. Doesn't really say how. So anyway, it doesn't really matter because the lines that I am marking on my fabric are the lines that I'm going to be cutting on. So you're not going to see these when you finish the quilt. And actually, it would be really nice to have my rotating cutting mat, because that makes it easier to turn my block. All right. So here I need to measure again 5 3/4 inches. So I'm going to place that there. We'll fold it in half and see. Hopefully I cut it at 11.5. I think I cut it at 11.5. Me, you never know. All right, so I'm going to fold this in half and see. Okay, so my line is right in the fold, so we should be good there. And let me fold it the other way. And my line, if it were straight, would be right in the fold. Okay, we are close enough because the 16 half square triangles that it's going to create are going to end up being 3.5, but they come out just a little bigger. So we do have some wiggle room here. Okay, now we are going to take this to the sewing machine. All right, we want to sew 1/4 inch on either side of these 2 lines. And just so happens my needle plate has 1/4 inch mark on the left-hand side of my presser foot. So I'm going to start by sewing 1/4 inch there. And I sewed on the wrong side of the line to do this. Okay, so I am gonna break thread. But if you sew on the correct side of the line, you can just turn around and get your 1/4 inch seam on the other side of your foot. So don't start on the right hand side, start on the left hand side. Okay, but I am sewing on the right. And we're going to do the same thing on the other line. Did I do it wrong again? Lift my foot. Did it wrong again. Dang it. Oh well, that's all right. Okay. So I'm going to line up 1/4 inch seam. And here we go. All right. So now we have 1/4 inch seam on either side of our marked lines. Now we are going to sew all the way around our 2 blocks 1/4 inch in. And you can start wherever you want. I'm going to start off to this side and go by my normal 1/4 inch seam. Now when you come close to the end of your foot or to the end of your fabric, my foot happens to have a little mark that is 1/4 inch. So I can sew until the edge of my fabric here is lined up with that 1/4 inch mark on my foot. If you don't, then you're going to have to guess a little bit, but you want to go 1/4 inch, and I went too far back. Okay, to the 1/4 inch away from this edge. Lift up your foot and pivot, and here you're going to sew 1/4 inch. Again, sew to there we go. 1/4 inch from the edge, lift your foot. So when you're doing this, you want your needle to be in the down position. Wait a minute. I need to go one more stitch. There we go. You want your needle to be in the down position when your sewing machine stops. And this is my last side. That is all of the sewing we need to do. Let's go back to our cutting table. So here we have our block. What we are going to do is cut down each of the lines that we drew. And this is where you don't want to move your fabric. And what did I do? I moved it. It's not that big a deal. You can put it back. Okay. We need to, there are 2 more cuts. And disappointingly enough, let's see. My mat is not big enough for this size, so I'm going to have to put it down on my regular mat, which is fine. Okay. So now we want to go from corner to corner. There we go. And we want to go from corner to corner the opposite way. All right. We're not done yet. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 more cuts to make. But at this point, we can push these off to the side and work on just one. So we've already marked or already cut through the center of the block one way. Now we are going to cut through the center of the block the opposite way. And it's easier to keep 2 pieces of fabric together than it is 8. So let's finish cutting up the rest of our blocks. And I'm not going to open them up yet because I have a tool that I want to share with you that will help you square up your blocks. Now, something that you can do when you cut these out, you can line up the points of your block or square on a line on your cutting mat. Then you line up your ruler with the lines on the cutting mat. That's not a whole lot of work to get 16 half square triangles. The next tool we're going to use is called a slotted trimmer. These are from New Leaf Stitches, and they come in different sizes. I'm going to try and get it so that you can read it. There we go. And in one pack you get, I believe, 2 trimmers. One is for your half-inch half square triangles, and the other is for your evenly cut. So like 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, and 6-inch half square triangles. Our half square triangles are supposed to be 3.5 inches when finished. So this tool you use when you still have your half square triangle folded. And what you do, you turn it the right way, and I am going to use my rotating cutting mat for this because it's easier. So hopefully there's not a glare, but you line up your seam line with the seam line on your ruler. Then you make a cut on each edge and a cut in the little divot on the side that lines up with your half square triangle. What that does, when it cuts all the way through, is it gets rid of your dog ears and gives you the perfect half square triangle. Now, last week I used my Steady Betty, and that seemed to work really well. But I had also purchased another tool that I want to try because it is less expensive than the Steady Betty. I thought, you know what, we're doing half square triangles, we might as well try out different tools. So this is actually a Sewmatic applique fusing mat with a bonus Teflon pressing sheet. What drew me to this product was see-through, non-slip design for easy applique creations. So you need no slip for applique. I'm hoping just like you need no slip for your half square triangles to maintain their square shape. So let's open this up and see what all we get. Now this mat can withstand up to 500 degrees. So I don't plan on having my iron any hotter than 500 degrees. I don't even plan on 500 degrees. And this is very grippy, very, very grippy. And then here is the Teflon mat that came with it. I don't know that we're going to need the Teflon mat for this, but I can always use a good Teflon mat. All right, let's, open this up. Now, I don't want to use this directly on my cutting mat because it will definitely warp it. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to put it on top of my Steady Betty because I used Steady Betty on top of this and there was no warping. All right, So the Steady Betty should grip the gripper mat, and the gripper mat should grip my half square triangle, right? All right, we are going to press to the dark side. Let me bring over the iron. So, oh yeah, and the iron doesn't move. That iron is not going, there's no way you can iron, you can only press. So I'm going to press my seam. I'm going to open, and then, yeah, iron does not move. And then I'm going to put this on top. I think I might like the Steady Betty better. Steady Betty better. It's definitely not going to let it move, but it's hard to get it open when you do it on this. All right, we'll try another one. Oh, but look, but wait, there's more. You don't have any dog ears on this half square triangle. There's a little bit over here, but your dog ears are gone. So that is the benefit of the slotted trimmer. This half square triangle block has already trimmed down the dog ears, and it is 3.5 inches square. Or at least it's supposed to be. Let's see. And it is. I'm measuring it on my mat right now. 3.5 inches. Yay. Let's try the Steady Betty after we cut up. We're not going to cut up. After we trim all of our half square triangles. In order to prevent myself from sewing my star incorrectly, I am setting it out on a table next to my sewing machine. So if you, like me, make mistakes when you're carrying it from one place to another, this is how I get around that. And the way that I sew my pieces together, I am leaving everything attached, and I'll show you what I mean. Now here, normally I would want to nest, but if I nest these seams, then I'm going to have black on the other side of my white. So I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that yet. I'll go ahead and nest my seams, and you know what? We'll see what happens. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the outside square and folding it to the left on the inside square. So I'm working vertically instead of horizontally. And I will show you why in a minute. So now these blocks are all together, and if I fold them open, I should have the first 2 rows from the right-hand side going left of my square. I'm going to put these back because they're all connected, so I don't have to worry about them coming apart or getting out of order. So here you can see these two rows are together, and now I will continue by folding this over and this over and this over and this over and sewing those together. We have these two rows together, these two rows together, except this one I had, it's its lone thing because I had to rip the stitch out because it didn't look right. So I can't even get it from this table to the sewing machine. Anyway, so what now I can do is I can flip this over. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is, yeah, flip this whole thing over like this. And make sure that I do it correctly. And then sew to join the individual rows together. So now, when I open up my rows, I have the entire block all together. I can move it around. I just have to sew the rows this way. And it's just a matter of folding it over. I have these threads that are holding it together, and that will make it easier to nest my seams. And at this point, I don't have to worry about it not being the right design. Yay! In this center where my star meets, I am opening the seam. I probably should have opened the seam for this whole block instead of pressing them to one side, because that's just going to make less bulk for me in the long run. But, you know, hindsight's 20/20, right? Okay, so here I open it up. I have the first two rows sewn together. I can flip this around and sew the other rows, the bottom and the center row. And let's see, he goes that way. I am just loving this black and white. I think it's going to be pretty. Okay. Okay. Now on the other one, I didn't open the seam on the bottom. I need to open the seam on the bottom part and the top. And that should significantly reduce the bulk. And I'm just finger pressing, so you don't have to take it back to the ironing board unless it makes you feel more comfortable, but okay. Cool. Okay. So here I have the other half of my block done. Now it's just a matter of folding the 2 rows over and finishing it. And here I've got this open. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break the rules. And I'm going to finger press this so that when I go over this bulk, it's not as bad. Now let's make sure I'm doing the right side because I've been flipping stuff around, which I should be able to tell because I have these seams. On this side, there will be no seams, so I'm pretty confident that I'm past the point of messing up my design. And I only had to rip out 1 seam, so yay. Okay. Let's see, make sure that I'm folding this. Nope. This is open, but he's going to go back that way. That's the only thing about half square triangles is they are bulky. But they're so pretty. They're worth the extra steps. Well, I thought I was going to have my seam hopper or hopper thing, but so far so good. Okay, let's see. I think we're okay. And here is my finished star block. So we started out with these 2 half square triangle blocks, and now we have week 2. And this block is so versatile. I actually made a whole bandana quilt using this block design. I just think it's so cool. So pretty and so easy. Just half square triangle. And I decided to take it just a step further. You know I love panels. And I thought, well, I can't take total credit. Di and I had been talking about me doing just a quilt that is a star block. And when I saw this star, I thought, you know what would be perfect in the middle? A panel. So I went looking through my panels, and it just so happens that this panel, I love cardinals, and it was perfect to be cut down to 32.5 by 32.5. Now the half square triangles, that was another kind of funny. So since this was going to be 32.5, I thought my half square triangle should be 16.5. So I would be able to put a half square triangle here and here, and that would make my star. So I Googled what size blocks do I need to make a 16.5 inch half square triangle block. And it said I needed to add an inch. Yes, add an inch. So that went from 16.5 to 17.5. And then double that. So 17.5 and 17.5 were 35. Hold on. Let me get my paper. Oh, that's funny. No, wait. Okay. No. I did the math right here. Okay. So 17.5 and 17.5 was 34. I didn't carry my 1. It really is 35. So I put 34. You know my math. I tell you my math is awful. So I thought that I needed 2 pieces of fabric, 34 by 34 inches. And that was going to make my 16.5 inch two 16.5 inch half square triangles. So I was thinking, if I'm only going to get 2 16.5 inch half square triangle blocks out of this 34 inch ginormous block, or the 2, then I was going to need 34 inches for these 2 half square triangles, these 2, those 2, and those 2. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to take so much fabric, because again, my math, no, especially when you're cutting it on a diagonal. So I found this fabric, and I thought this looked really good with this. It pulls out some of the green and then the blue swirls. So, you know, I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll start with this and see what happens. So I made 34 inch by 34 inch, a white block and a block out of the pretty swirly fabric. And I went from corner to corner. So like, just say this is it, or just say this is it, because it's just a couple inches bigger than that. I went from corner to corner and drew a line, and corner to corner and drew a line. I actually folded it up so that I had points, so I could go from the center, or from the corner to the center, and the center to the corner. So I sat down at my sewing machine, and I thought, okay, I'll sew a 1/4 inch on either side of the one line. I had marked 2, and I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to get 2 16.5 inch half square triangle blocks, then really I only need to sew a 1/4 of an inch on each side of that one diagonal line, because that, you know, one side's going to be a half square triangle block and the other side. So that's what I did, and I opened it up, and honestly, I think that was one half square triangle block that was probably the same size as this. I'm like, well, I need more than this, and this one's really big. So I sewed a 1/4 inch on either side of the line that I had drawn going this way. So I've got 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Okay. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to cut it on the line. So I cut the diagonal here, you know, in between on the line that I drew, and I cut in between on the line that I drew. So I have this triangle here, right here. It's got a seam here and a seam here. So I can't open that up because I've got a seam and a seam. So then I cut down this angle and cut this angle. And when I opened it up, I had this. So I got 2 half square triangle blocks out of each quadrant. And that made up my 8 blocks that I needed to go around my panel. So I just lucked out. It was not planning or knowing my math. I just lucked out. So if you want to make something like this, I cut my panel at 32.5 inches. This block here and the corners are 16.5 inch blocks. So it was a miracle, but I love how it turned out. So there you go. So many things that you can do with half square triangles. So many things. So here we've got this week's half square triangle block. We have last week's. I don't know if you can hear her whining in the background, but she was. So then I've got 2 of these blocks from last week. We're only 2 weeks in and I've already made a quilt. How cool is that? 34.5 inches. Just make 2, it's not quite a yard of 2 different fabrics. Yeah. And gotta love a good cardinal. I am going to Ireland next year in 2025 in September. If you would like to join me, I would love for you to come along and see the beautiful scenery in Ireland. We're going to make scones and do crystal carving. I think we're going to watch the crystal carving. I don't think they're going to let us do that, but it'll be fun to watch. Have a great day, eat some chocolate, and be kind to everyone. And here are some of the half square triangle blocks that my friends have made and shared pictures of with me. Have a great day, eat some chocolate, and be kind to everyone. Until next time, bye. Do over. Blah, blah, blah.